All right, there we are. I should have mic working nice and clear. I did a speed check, and I'll give you guys just a moment to pop in there. Here, I'll give you a little tour while you guys pop in there. I'll flip the camera, and I'll give you a tiny tour of my little equipment stash over here that I use for making videos and photos and all that good stuff. While you guys pop in there, let me know as soon as you guys see the chat. Here's my little shelf here. Whoops, I got the microphone. Got my microphone, my little Rode. This is a great little wireless mic, by the way. This way I can get away from the camera. You can see I got my light shelf here, little lights. That's a preview screen. Hey everybody, good to see you in the live stream. There's my extra mic shelf. This is one of my 3 gimbals. This one is a mid-size gimbal for use on the Sony RX100. This is my favorite area over here. These are lenses. These are my regular like pro lenses that I use for portraits. But on this is my vintage lens collection here. All these there's these old Russian lenses and stuff, and I adapt all these to my cameras for doing photos, and of course I can do videos too. A lot of these lenses are from the 60s, 70s, 80s. Here's a Hasselblad lens. That's a great lens. And you guys can see, as you can see, the cops are here right now. Here's other stuff. No, not just kidding, the cops are not here. This is one of my other lights. That's really annoying, isn't it? Let's talk about that for a second while you guys pop in there. This light is not annoying. This is a good light. This makes me nice and cozy, right? This light, wow. Police lights, I don't know if a study's been done on this, but I don't think we need a real deep study to know that these lights, this red and blue flashing, you guys, it probably doesn't have the same effect over a screen, is not just what it represents, that it represents that you're going to be robbed and extorted on the side of the road. This light is meant to psychologically disrupt you. When you look at this light, it stresses you out, it wigs you out. I could make this way brighter. In fact, I will show you. If you think that this isn't psychological torture, let's turn off this light. All right, I'm not done here. I'm not done here, because we're only at, hang on. We're only at, there's a very nice light. We're only at 30%. Let's crank this up to 100%. Is that annoying enough for you right there? How's that? How do I look? Here, let's, have you had enough? How do you like seeing that in your rearview mirror? It's meant to intimidate, because that's what highway robbers do. They use tools to intimidate you. And unfortunately, it seems to work this way mostly in all of the world. I'm going to turn this down before I give someone a seizure. I'm going to turn that down to 0. I'm going to turn on a 30-inch softbox so I can get my focus back and get my light going. And thanks, Guimito. This light, this is not all this does. This is actually a full RGB light, and it's quite useful. It is a bowling RGB vlogging light, and you can see that if I switch it to this mode, it's just a regular nice light, and if I switch it to the next mode, it actually is a colored light that represents the full RGB spectrum. I can actually change it in real time to any color that I want. Very nice lighting tool for your photography needs, but I'm going to switch it to a sane 2800 Kelvin hair light for now, and we're going to talk a little bit now that you guys have popped in there. Good evening, everyone. I'm just starting this video. I was showing you around the office a little bit while you got in there, and now I'm going to put this on a little tripod. I may even edit this part out later of me showing you guys all the crazy stuff. Yes, I do live in Mexico, and it's very nice. And it's not, hang on, I'm finding a place to hang my mic from. Whatever, here, I'm gonna put it right here. Okay, it's not always as it seems. Do I need these? My glasses are falling apart, you guys. Falling apart, okay? Man, join the Patreon. Thanks, Guamito. Keep resisting Blue ISIS. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit today about all these stories we see. And I was showing you those cop lights and kind of showing off some of my toys in here that I make videos with. But I just want to tell you all, I want to invite you all down, not just you, Aaron, but all you guys, like come down and see Mexico. If you've never left the US, or maybe if you've only gone to the US and Canada especially, Canada actually I think has more freedom than the USA, and they're less intense, they're less horrible people, I think. But what I'm getting at is almost everything that you read is propaganda these days. Let me give you an example. I'm going to go over here to Reddit, okay? Let me grab this camera. I made a post on Reddit today. And it's been really busy, by the way. I know I haven't done a lot of videos. YouTube has kind of sucked lately. And I do have some big videos coming up, some big news coming up, but I'm not going to tell you about that just yet. Okay, now this is a post that I made on Reddit. I don't know why it's not focusing, but it says, and I made this on the Hong Kong Reddit this morning. And I was saying I was in awe of the Hong Kong people because of how much they stand up. And that I hear things about them saying, you know, we need the USA to intervene. We want freedom like the USA. And I said, you don't want to become to the USA. We have no balls and we have no freedom. You can see this has 0 votes because it's only 41% upvoted, because almost every response on here was outrage from a US flag waver following this Hong Kong, right? Let's get this straight. This is a Reddit about people ferociously standing up for their freedoms while their terrorist police and government wage war on them. Not quite a revolution in the traditional sense, but it's bad and people are disappearing and the police are violent and people are trying to stand up to them. And when you look at this, and there's all these posts about this on there, and people cheering for that. Oh yeah, stand up to those police. The moment I made a post exposing how corrupt the USA was and saying that we can't even stand up a fraction as much in the USA as the people in Hong Kong are doing, and they need to stand strong. They need to be courageous, and praising them for that. The US people came out and they downvoted and they commented and they said, oh, you know, this is not how it is. We have tons of freedom here. What are you talking about? Comparing us to China. Immediately, the cognitive dissonance kicked in, right? They have to justify their slavery. And that was the narrative. Now, I posted this actually on the page here, on the community page of my YouTube channel on Facebook. I don't even know if a lot of you are on Reddit, so it didn't get a lot of engagement, except for negative engagement. And that's what struck me. And so I was thinking about that and then what I hear about Mexico all the time, guys. And that goes to my point today. I haven't just been rambling this whole time as I've been throwing out police lights and talking about Hong Kong and Reddit, and Iran is in uproar, and Bolivia is in uproar as well with protests. Chile is in uproar. So what's going on, right? And people are saying, oh, the government caved, right? The government caved and they're going to rewrite the Constitution. No, the government didn't cave. The US is inserting a puppet in Bolivia. I believe that's the one. And the new puppet is just increasing the abuse, because that's what the US benefits by. The US benefits by Latin America. There's so much going on in all these countries across the world right now that I'm kind of having a hard time keeping up and keeping them all straight. Because you have Hong Kong, you have Iran, you have Chile, you have Bolivia, you have all these different places, and I'm probably missing some. So shout them out, and you guys go look these things up. Look what's happening across the world. People are standing up, and they're putting out this idea that it's because of social programs and things like that. But they're lying. People are tired of their freedoms being taken. They're tired of being taxed to death by ridiculous carbon taxes that serve nothing for the environment and only serve to enrich the elite. They're tired of their children being abused. Meanwhile, in the USA, what's happening? Na, 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 America is great. Okay, that's all that's happening in the USA. Because the few of us that stand in the USA die or go to prison. Or like me, you think ahead a little and you leave before they get there. So around the world, people are trying to stand up to their totalitarian terrorist governments. And what's the US news say? Whatever makes the US look good and everywhere else go bad. You know, a few weeks ago, there was this terrible shooting in Chihuahua, Mexico, all right, of the LeBaron family. And these cowards attacked, let's talk about this for a moment. These cowards attacked women and children while they were in a caravan. Chihuahua's near the border. The LeBaron family has been down here for generations. They have farms, and their heritage is originally from the USA, but they've all mixed in, and there's actually a city there that is Mexicanos, and it's Gringos, and it's LeBarons, and anybody's welcome there. They have a community there, but it definitely leans more culture, and a lot of U.S. influence in the culture in colonial LeBaron. All right. Bunch of the family members, the women and children, are going up to the USA for a wedding or something. And they're massacred, and I believe it was 9. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I believe some were wounded, and 9 women and children were murdered outright on this thing. Now, immediately, there's outrage. There's outrage in Mexico. There's outrage in the US, but most of that outrage is simply outrage for propaganda's sake. Look how terrible Mexico is. Did anyone notice there was a shooting or two this past week in the USA too? In fact, there was a shooting where a family was watching football over the weekend in their backyard in the USA, and some guy showed up and he shot like 9 people and killed 4 people watching football in their backyard, and they were massacred. Why? I don't know. When the LeBarons were attacked, and my brother, by the way, was at the funeral in Chihuahua. He went up there and he talked to them, and he was at their funeral paying his respects, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. But have you noticed something down here? When something terrible happens, the U.S. uses it as part of the propaganda machine. And people say, look how terrible Mexico is. What an awful place. I can't believe. And I was getting warning emails, and people were saying, like, maybe you should move somewhere else, Gavin. When a bad thing happens in the USA, it's bad, right? But the USA has mass shootings all the time. Mexico doesn't have those kind of rampant, reasonless killings very often. Most of the killing in Mexico can be traced directly to the US-sponsored drug war. And so randomly killing women and children is not a thing. In the USA, yeah. But that's not how it's spun. In the USA, it's a horrible tragedy and we need to take away guns, right? That's the narrative there. In Mexico, look at that third world country. Trump is talking, oh, maybe I need to send people down to help them. The USA is the terrorists of the world, and they're the ones whose goal, whose aim is to keep Latin America and the rest of the world, the poorest countries in the world, down here, while them and the elite rich countries of the world stay up here and control the money and the power. That's the angle. It's not hard to figure out. This isn't some radical conspiracy theory. All you got to do is look at what we did in the Middle East and are doing in the Middle East. Look what we do in Latin America. Look what we do across the world, except with our allies who have a lot of power. With them, we play ball, we play the game, and we all get along, sort of. And we make up rivalries to entertain the sheep with Russia or with Europe or with whoever, right? So you go to a place like Hong Kong, and Hong Kongers are standing up boldly. And they think, oh man, we need freedom like the USA. But the problem is we don't have that freedom. They've just seen that in our propaganda and our movies that we spend billions of dollars putting out. So when I make a post warning the people of Hong Kong, just like I warn the people of Mexico, you do not want to be like the USA. They're terrorists, they're criminals, and as individuals there, we do not have freedom. And when you say this, all they can respond is with insults, some of which you'll see in this chat room and on my videos and posts and on yours probably. All they can respond with, just like when you remind them that the Constitution forbids all immigration restriction, and then that's also part of the elite scheme to control people. And people say, oh no, that's not how it is. That's how it is. It's written. It's part of history. But when you deny people's cognitive dissonance that says they're better, They're freer. That's what we've been sold in the USA. So while the rest of the world looks at their government and says, our government is psycho, as Venezuela collapses, as Chile is in riots, as Hong Kong resists, these people are saying our government is insane. They're not heroes, they're not protecting us, and we need to resist with all principled resistance that we can, including force, including destroying their vehicles, including running them out of town, which you see in Mexico also to a lesser extent, because it's a little bit more stable here. Why is it that all over the world, France too, even parts of Europe, guys, are resisting? And the USA is saying, oh my goodness, God bless us, we are so free, we are so good. Oh, Trump 2020. They say, Gavin, I really love the Constitution, and I don't agree with everything Trump's doing and abusing people, but I really support him for 2020 because he's our only hope. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You dumbed down mental midget. That you cannot see through this. How much does it take for us to open our flippin' eyeballs, you guys? You're being played. Left and right are the same. We can't excuse it. We don't get to blame it on fluoride. We don't get to blame it on cell towers. It's our fault. We are lazy, hypocritical, self-righteous society that doesn't give a rat's ass about anyone with ourselves. We don't love our neighbor like Jesus taught us. Look at Jeff Winehouse, 30 years in prison because he survived an attempted murder by police. Look at Schaefer Cox, still sitting in prison, resentenced to another 7 years, even though his case was proven a fraud in court. Look at Jim Hamilton, a guy who's been in prison for 30 years on trumped up rape charges where the case is full of holes. Look at the executions happening in Texas. Larry Swearingen and the others. Rodney Reed got a reprieve this last week, but look at it, it's constant. The bloodlust of our government is insane, you guys. And the tyrannical government always has a bloodlust, but few nations have more of a bloodlust than the USA. So what does the USA say? What does the USA do? Oh, they might issue an edict, or the UN might say, oh, the Hong Kong police need to respect the people. The people are standing up. If we stood up half as much as the Hong Kongers are in the USA, they would open fire on us en masse in the streets. Because the soldiers are not on our side. They don't defend the Constitution. They follow orders. Because the police are not on their side. No, they're not going to choose you when push comes to shove. They're going to kill you like they're doing in the streets every single day across the USA. Stop deluding ourselves. We have to wake up. This is why I left the USA. And this was just a reminder. This Reddit post I mentioned about Hong Kong connects to Mexico because what I'm getting at is not everything in the world is as it seems. In fact, if you're reading it in English, it's probably false outright, or at least spun in the direction of propaganda. It's very hard to get accurate information without being there. When you see a story about Mexico and what's happening there in English, you can be almost 100% sure that it's not accurate and that it's being used for propaganda. If it's from any sort of a mainstream news source. Even if it's from an individual like me, hey, I'm telling you, come see for yourself. Don't take my word for it alone. Come prove it, like I do in the streets down here. So you got places like Mexico, like the Philippines, like all over Latin America that have vastly more freedom than the USA. You have France standing up. You have Hong Kong standing up. You have areas of Latin America that the US is trying their best to make sure they stay unstable so they can install puppet presidents so that they can maintain the drug war and maintain the control, because the drug war is losing favor, not just in Latin America, but yes, in the USA. In the USA, however, they'll simply kill you or put you in prison. One way you can get semi-accurate information of what's happening in Mexico is oftentimes if you read the Fox or the NBC or the ABC News article that's sheer propaganda. The Fox ones are the worst. They're propaganda headlines, propaganda spin. They flat out lie about what's going on so they can make Mexico look bad, make Trump look good, make the fascist state, the wall, New Berlin, and destruction of the Constitution look good, because that's their job. Thanks, LJB. So as we're talking about this situation with the LeBarons, and then you read the English news articles and you hear all this spin, and I say, guys, you're getting propagandized. And people say to me, well, Gavin, what do you mean? It didn't happen? Yeah, it happened. It's real. My brother was at the funeral. He stood beside them and talked to them face to face. And it's awful. But what did the U.S. and the news media, even in Mexico, immediately start saying? Oh, this was the cartels. Okay, so they get Mexico to say it's the cartels. The U.S. government immediately starts spreading the propaganda, and everybody's like, oh, look, these cartels are out of control. Guys, the cartels, the violent cartels exist in Mexico because of the USA. They are intentional. But here's the thing. What happened with the LeBarons, and I don't want to speak for this family in any way. I want us to mourn with them. What I can say is there's no evidence been put out, down here or up there, that I've seen or that I've heard anyone else have seen that cartels did this. Allow me to throw this out there and you guys can mull it over. The idea of people sweeping in on a deserted road while people are driving up to the US border and seemingly pointlessly slaughtering women and children on the side of the road and then disappearing into the sunset is not the style of cartels. It's certainly not the style of the Sinaloas that they were blaming it on. And my impression is that no one involved really believes that the cartels did this. I don't know exactly what happened there, but cartels don't wander around just randomly killing innocent women and children. That's what US police do, guys. That's what the US cartel does. Cartel violence is terrible. And the drug war has created a lot of problems all over the world. But you know what? We have to get to the bottom. We have to get to the truth. Hey, Darren, shout out to our channel backers there. Appreciate it. I see some people kind of thinking this through in the comments. If you read books about how like the CIA operates, this hit reeks of a CIA op to fulfill an agenda or create propaganda. Do I have evidence directly that that happened? No. So I'm not going to make a statement about who did this, but I want you guys to use your brains. This incident that happened in Chihuahua is not how cartels behave. Even the really bad ones, right? The Sinaloa cartel, who they tried to blame it on, it's almost laughable because sure, these are organized crime, right? But they're businesses. They're businesses. Guys, if you're running a corporation, killing women and children in the community is not a benefit for you. You might have rivalries with your gangs, like in Chicago and places like that. But organized crime, keyword organized. The Sinaloas are notorious for helping communities, building parks, building roads. That's why El Chapo is actually kind of a folk hero in Mexico. Doesn't mean he's a good guy. So why did the US want him out? Because they want more violence. They want more control. They want to create more chaos. El Chapo was certainly not the most violent by any sense of cartels. The US government is the most violent. So they illegally had him extradited and put him in a US prison. Are we connecting the dots? The English stories you're reading are propaganda. Click on where it says the source and then go translate that to English, the one that was actually written on the streets in Mexico, and see what people are saying, right? The drug war is a scam. It's meant to destabilize countries, to keep the people in fear, and to empower the police state of the USA. We're being had, you guys. We're being had from Hong Kong to Hanau, and from Chile to Chesterfield. All over the world, the governments and the powerful are manipulating, and people say, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing we can do. Yes, you can. You can say no. You can walk away. You can say no to the courts. You can say no to the police. You can turn on a camera. Is there any place in this world that truly has freedom? I doubt it. I don't know of it. Otherwise, I'd be headed that way. But Mexico has vastly more freedom than the USA. Similar with places like the Philippines and many Latin American countries. I think, honestly, there's few countries in the world that do not have more freedom than the USA. Sure, Europe has a lot of nanny state stuff going on. It's lame, real lame. But you know, the US leads in terrorism. It leads in imprisoning its people. And as I was commenting on this today, trying to get this information out to the Hong Kongers, all the gringos were on there saying, oh, you're an idiot, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're absurd, none of this stuff is happening in the USA. And I went and I started making lists, you guys. I started making lists. I said, what are you talking about? And I just went to my articles, and you see them constantly. Arizona cop violently attacks a black teen with no arms or legs? What the bleep? Are you freaking kidding me? This is every day. Cops held mentally ill man down on scorching asphalt until his skin melted off. These are not sane peacekeepers that maybe just enforce too many dumb rules, guys. These are terrorists. These are psychopaths. And police that are doing this, which is all of them in the USA because they're all taking part of it. I don't know if that's the case everywhere in the world. You don't see this kind of police violence in Mexico, in Guatemala, in Colombia. Okay? And people are always like, Gavin, you're just being sensational. I don't have to be sensational. These are what are flowing by every single day from a government whose police are killing, murdering on the street 3 to 5 people per day and hospitalizing 1,000 per day on average. Think it through. And stop sending me stories about how, oh, Gavin, what's next? Like, I just heard this happen in Mexico. I'm glad you guys are worried for my safety, but stop buying into every bit of propaganda you read. For every killing in Mexico that makes the news, there's a bunch more in the USA that no one's even paying attention to. I heard the USA talking about the LeBaron incident for a week, and you know what? That's fine. I'm outraged. I don't want to stop talking about it. People need to be brought to justice. The people behind this need to be exposed. And we need to stand up for these families and individuals. But man, when there's 2 or 3 mass shootings in a weekend in the USA, it's out of the news in 2 days. Quick news, take away guns, move on. A new teddy bear is arriving at the mall. Because they don't want you to be quite as afraid. They want you scared. They want you relying on government. So we have to have the violence, right? We have to stage and manipulate and allow violence in the USA because we got to keep people afraid and trusting the almighty arm of government. But we don't want to go too long because we don't want people to start actually thinking that the USA isn't the greatest and the bestest anymore, because that would be bad for our narrative. All right, guys, I've been going for a while. Just remember, that's my main topic today. Things in Mexico and everywhere else are not as they seem. You got to start standing up for your neighbors. You got to start resisting. But if you really want to resist much, you're going to have to leave the USA. Because if you stand up in the USA like I did, people aren't going to stand beside you. It's not going to be like Hong Kong where 10,000 people are going to be on your left and on your right. Or like Chile, where 200 kids are chasing 20 cops down the road because they're criminals and thugs. Or even like Mexico, where communities are running their governments out of town, police, federal, state, and local, because they've had enough of the corruption. So you're not going to do that in the US. The US doesn't have freedom. You don't have the ability to stand up anymore because not enough people are willing to do it, because they're completely brainwashed. And no, they're not waking up. I've been doing this for years, and there's a few of you like on this channel right now that are getting it and are waking up. But the masses, if you speak out against the idea that they're free, if you try and expose, it's not that they want all the violence and tyranny, guys. It's that they will not listen because they're in a state of slavery, propaganda, and cognitive dissonance. And so when you say, look at all these insane crimes that our police and our government are committing, in a sane world, in much of the world, the people see that and they're absolutely outraged. Cops don't get away with that kind of stuff in Mexico. But in the USA, they're going to reject that as relevant because they have to believe. They've so convinced themselves that in their obedience, subjugation, and bootlicking that they're free, that they have to stick with it. Because if they admit that these things you're exposing are true and it's as bad as you're saying, then they have to admit they have no freedom, like I did, and then they stand up and then they get jailed and then they get targeted and then they go to prison, die, or leave. You don't have to walk into a gas chamber. It's hard to leave. Sometimes you got to man up and do it. The U.S. is not going to be saved. There's no revolution. The U.S. has already died with a whimper and a groan, and it's just going to continue collapsing. Maybe that hunk of land in the future will be a new country of freedom once it all collapses and goes to dust. But you're not going to fix the United States of America. The United States of America is gone, and it's time to start admitting that. And so there's always going to be people spreading all kinds of propaganda about Mexico. I have a friend in Mexico, and he told me all these terrible things. Yes, guys, terrible things happen everywhere. And the drug war has caused most of the terrible things in Mexico. And there's corruption, and there's dumbness, and there's ignorance, and there's laziness, just like everywhere else. But the level of freedom is not even on the same page. Mexico is up here, and the USA is down here. They're not even comparable to each other for someone that has any grasp of what freedom looks like. And we need to understand that as well. So when you hear people talking about Mexico, and this is what they do to try and make themselves feel better about the USA, and they're like, oh, I have a cousin that lives there. I have family that used to live there. They said it's terrible. Guys, Mexicans repeat propaganda about their own country. They hear so much of it, and they're frustrated. And so most of the time when I'm talking to the Mexicanos, they're repeating propaganda, and it's about stuff that's past, right? It might have happened 10 years ago, and now that town's been cleaned up, but they didn't remember that part. Because they actually, while in the USA, we're always looking for an excuse to make our country great, in Mexico, they're actually looking for a reason to explain why their country kind of sucks and their government is so bad. Now, that negativity might sound like not a good idea, but you know what? Despite all the corruption, a country where the people recognize that their government is corrupt and broken and useless and dysfunctional, even if it has that corruption, that country is far more free, far more awake, and has far more potential than a country like the USA, where people are in absolute unmitigated denial 24 hours a day, pretending the soldiers are heroes, the police are heroes, the government keeps them safe, going to their football games, going home, going to the beach on the weekend, having their new things that they're in debt for. They don't have any freedom, guys. Does that mean you shouldn't be careful in Mexico? No, I was careful when I traveled the USA. There's some shady areas. You guys do realize that the murder rate in Louisiana is higher than almost every city in Mexico, with the exception of maybe Tijuana this year, okay? You don't hear that on the news, do you? See, they're not telling you what's really going on. The USA is a nation of bloodlust. And while that nature exists, I think, in human nature, Mexico and Latin America doesn't have that let's interfere with everyone, let's conquer everyone. That unmitigated bloodlust, let's steal from everyone, let's take their oil, let's conquer their nations. Mexico does not go out and go to war with other nations. So these are some things to think about. All right, I'm going to let it go. I hope you guys got something out of this. I know we went kind of long, but I thought it was kind of important to touch on some of these various issues. Very cool, Eddie. Thanks for the support. Thanks to all you channel backers and Patreons, by the way. YouTube revenue kind of sucks these days, so I appreciate you guys supporting me making more videos and clicking that subscribe, the like button, the join the channel button to back us with a few bucks a month. Really appreciate it. And we'll see how it goes. I've been working on some new products over on my day job site, simfx.com, for you photographers and video makers. If you're doing that stuff, check it out. There's a new product called Filmist that is good for, well, just go check it out on my main day job page, SEIMFX.com. But you can follow me on Twitter, Gavin Sime, Instagram, Gavin Sime, and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. I'm out there, guys. I'll try to keep making content for you for as long as I can. And You know, the day may come where I'll stand up to somebody and they will kill me for it. But you know what? I would rather die standing up with a measure of freedom and saying no than just be gunned down like a dog by terrorist police, only to have everyone say, oh, well, he should have obeyed. He should have done what he's told. I don't want to live in that kind of a country. I don't want my kids to live in that kind of a country. And I'm not simply going to tolerate it. And that's why I'm not there. What's to come? Who knows? But I do have some interesting things to tell you about that have been going on. And I'll be making some big videos on that soon. I'm still working out some of the stuff on it. So stay tuned. All right, guys, peace. Love your neighbor. Take care. Thanks all. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. Have a good night.